A very blessed good morning to everyone. It's indeed a privilege this morning to come and share with the Elton Wesleyan Church as we celebrate our pastors from 1983 until 2004. It gives me great pleasure to be able to present this script, which mainly celebrates the service of these two visionary leaders who, like me, chose teaching as a profession. I have had the honor of working side by side with these gentlemen, having served on the local board of administration, which is LBA, under their leadership. We wish to thank Sister Cheryl Cumberbatch, granddaughter of Reverend Lawrence, and Reverend Dr. Sherlyn Kellman for cooperating with us in the provision of several of the details presented here today. Appreciation must also be extended to Brother Charles Dublin. Please stand, sir. Right, he's a member of the White Park Wesleyan Church, who submitted comments in support of the ministry of Reverend Lawrence. He and his family initially accompanied Reverend Lawrence in their transition to Elton during the first 6 months. Reverend D.K. Lawrence. The Reverend Dermot Kenneth Lawrence was born on the 27th of April, 1921, one of 13 children. He was educated at the Montgomery Boys' School, the Barbados Academy, and the Commonwealth School. A graduate of Edison Teachers Training College, he commenced his teaching career at St. Stephen's Boys' School, continued at Montgomery Boys' School before settling at Buxton's Boys' School, where he taught for over 30 years, attaining the position of deputy headmaster at his retirement in 1976. In the interest of fulfilling his lifelong ambition, he took an early retirement from teaching and threw himself fully into Christian ministry. I remember he saying such, as soon as he retired, he's going into full-time ministry, and that he did. Reverend Lawrence, affectionately referred to as Pa Law, a shortening of Pastor Lawrence, had a burning passion for the salvation of souls and consequently pursued religious studies, graduating from God's Bible School. He pastored various Wesleyan congregations, including the Cave Hill, Hoyts, and White Park churches. He retired from active ministry on the 31st of October, 1991, after pastoring the Elton Church. I can vividly remember when he was coming to Elton, he was coming to serve two churches. Back then, the Elton Wesleyan Church and the Woburn Wesleyan Church were a circuit, so the pastor had to pastor both churches. But when Reverend Lawrence came, he said, one church. And he said, one church, that's why I'm pastoring, and that he did. Sister Cheryl submitted that from his earliest involvement in the ministry of the Wesleyan Holiness Church, Pa Law engaged in early morning open-air meetings and was known to visit the homes of his members regularly, as his mantra was that a home-going pastor made for a church-going people. And never did he leave a home without offering them a word of prayer and ending his visit with blessings on you. Reverend Lawrence and his wife, Harrison's Elmina Lawrence, whom he affectionately called El, took up office at Elton on the 6th of April, 1983, after the departure of Reverend Ruby Christie, who served the church at Burns Hill. Sister Lawrence served quietly and demonstrated her gifts in the fine skill using her hands, making floral arrangements to help beautify the church. The Lawrences were the parents of 7 children. Their legacy of commitment and dedication to God service is evident in the lives of their offspring, who are all active in Christian ministry in Barbados and the USA. Allerton was considered the Lawrence's first assignment to a rural church, having then left the then largest city church at White Park. So you could imagine the apprehensions that he would have had coming from a big city church or a small church at Allerton. Pastor Lawrence never felt that a small building defined who we were. He believed that the physical appearance of the church should be of a very high standard and deliberately set about enhancing the house of worship inside and out. One can clearly remember him expressing great concern for the state of the physical plant. As a result, he was instrumental in bringing about many improvements, including new bathroom facilities, which were constructed between 1985 and 1986. I can also remember that time when the new bathroom facilities were being erected. Mr. Nurse and myself, we were the ones who dug that well at midnight. Right? During the night, we dug that well so that we can have a proper facility at Allerton. He always expected big things from Allerton, especially as it was clear that a wealth of talent resided within the 4 small gray walls that formed the building on Allerton Main Road. He threw himself into every aspect of ministry and was delighted to sit among the youth. One can recall that the youth at Allerton traveled to Trinidad one Easter weekend, and Reverend Lawrence accompanied them, not to spy, but to enjoy the camp experience and fellowship with his lambs. I remember he had his suitcase. His wife had everything packed there for him so neatly, so folded, everything pressed. We wondered where he was going, right? When he took out his clothes, everything was there for him, right? And I remember that we had a great time in Trinidad, St. Augustine at school, and we enjoyed ourselves. We were not able to use the facility and the home ec, but we set up our kitchen in the corridor. Brother Rimple, he was the main cook, right? May he rest in peace. And we had a lovely time. I remember also during those times that Allerton used to have their own camps, right? The district had district camp, but Allerton we had also camps. And that's where we honed most of our skills, and all the ones who were part of that camp developed to be indeed very good members of the Allerton Wesleyan Holiness Church. His granddaughter, Shalwa, provided these facts that may have been well known about Paul's life. You would not have known these. 1, conducted lessons for all who would avail themselves of his free enterprise. A number of prominent persons benefited. Remember, school teachers back then, they offered their services quite free. Once you were able to come, they were able to teach you, and many persons availed themselves of such. But today is a different story. He played cricket with the boys in the backyard, bowled pretty good off spin, right, too. Was an excellent swimmer and often retrieved the ball in the sea when it drifted out to the outer reach of those playing. During the long summer holidays, he would often take a bunch of fellows to the sea. He was a scout master, acquired the skill of carpentry, joinery during his studies at Emerson College. He was an efficient gardener, made some of the best homemade ice cream, made cookies in all shapes and sizes, kept a diary where he recorded important events. He said he knew solfa music, solfa ladido and all that. That's what he taught. He wrote and directed plays and choreographed action songs. Reverend Lawrence loved Allerton, and Allerton loved Reverend Lawrence. We remember his outstanding characteristics, impeccable penmanship. He was from that era, right? Very good calligraphy, and he also used to sign certificates and so on. In his infectious laugh, informative and poignant messages, and immaculate attire. Always had on his suit three-piece suit, and so on. Reverend Lawrence was an exceptional pastor and a true gentleman. He took the ministry of pastoring to a very high standard. He transformed the Elton Wesley Holiness Church into one of the leading churches on the Wesleyan district. I remember even when he used to collect the missionary offering, we were up against the larger churches, White Park, Carrington's, Q Wesleyan, which is now known as the Mount of Praise, KFL and those. But Elton was always among the big churches. I don't know how come, but we were in the big churches. And that year we took down to the district about I can't remember, over $10,000, and we won the banner for the first time. A little small church beating all the city churches. That's the might of the giving here at Elton. We were always a giving church. And Pa Law was so happy about that, right? He was overjoyed. He used the collegial approach that he had honed in the teaching profession to good effect. His impeccable penmanship was put to great effect when he wanted any member to undertake an assignment. Whenever he wanted someone to perform a task, he would provide that individual with a beautiful handwritten assignment. This also could be attributed to the fact that he did not hear very well and wore a hearing aid. Sometimes he used, when he wanted to tune out, I sure he used to turn off your hearing ears when he didn't want to hear you. Yes, indeed. I remember that anytime you receive a letter from Reverend Lawrence, even if you wanted to decline the assignment, you couldn't afford it after that penmanship. You couldn't say no. So he got everyone to do whatever he wanted. Reverend Lawrence exemplified all the characteristics of a true pastor, which are laid out in the scriptures. One thing I fondly remember about his great man of God was he would always pray with you after interacting with you on some pertinent manner. Whenever he visited your home and before he left, he would pray for you and your family. I also remember when I was youth president, he came to my home. He recognized that we were having little issues inside the youth department. He came to my home, invited me out to his car. We sat down and we talked. And after we talked, he prayed. And that helped me a lot. That showed me how kind of person, a personal person that he was. He made sure that he connected with all of his members. And I really appreciated the time that we spent together, and that helped me to be a better person and to emulate his good qualities. After his retirement on the 31st of October 1991, Reverend Lawrence and his wife, Sister Lawrence, remained members of the Elton Church, to tell you how much they loved this church. He was so very proud to see the progress of the church, both numerically and its physical development. Through the years, he remained a consummate teacher, preacher, prayer warrior, family man, and community figure. Reverend Lawrence went home to glory on August 6, 2008. Well done, good and faithful servant. I also remember the time when he had his Starlet Toyota vehicle. He used to be, his left foot used to be on the clutch for a very long time. We wondered if he didn't come off the clutch, right? But I also remember that when the car was down, that did not stop Reverend Lawrence from coming to church. He would catch the transport board bus and we would come up for 10 o'clock every Wednesday for prayer and fast, and that's from 10 to 12. This is the measure of man that we were dealing with. And when he first came to Elton, the parsonage, he came from White Park, Strathclyde, and we were saying that the parsonage were being too small for him. So we relocated him in, I think it's West Terrace. And Reverend Lawrence said, I don't care how much it costs. I will pay half of the rent. But as a church, we can't allow that, right? That shows you the measure of the man he was. And he always invited all of the important persons in the ministry, various departments, to his home, and we had a good time of fellowship the time that he was there. We move on to Reverend Carlos Brathwaite. At the time of Reverend Lawrence's official retirement, the late assistant pastor to Reverend Lawrence, Brother Carlos Brathwaite, was charged with the responsibility of transitioning the church to the new leadership of Reverend Dr. Kellman, who took up office on March 1992. Pastor Carlos served in many areas of the Elton Church and was known for his many passionate contributions. He was later called to serve as the pastor of the Social Hall Church, now Dunamis Outreach Assembly of the Wesley Holiness Church, where he was ordained and continues to serve with his family. Reverend Dr. Kellman. In 1980, graduate of the Caribbean Wesleyan College in Barbados, Reverend Kellman came to the Elton Church in March 1992, and his then wife Jacqueline and sons Timothy and Philip. He served until his resignation in October 2004. I also remember as Brother Jefferson and my late sister Beverly were the ones who brought him to Elton. And we thank them dearly for bringing him to Elton. And also remember, the older folks were saying, we getting a doctor, boy, right? We getting a doctor. That's what they were so ecstatic about. Reverend Kellman is also a 1986 graduate of the College of God's Bible School with a BA in Counseling and Psychology. In 1987, graduated from the University of Cincinnati with a master's degree in education, psychological foundations. In 1996, he gained a doctorate from the University of Cincinnati, ED.D, for psychological foundations, developmental psychology, and counseling. A youthful, passionate, and energetic leader. He is the first pastor in our Legend series who is still alive today and has sent the following greetings, and I quote, "A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never dying soul to save and fit for the skies. To serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may all my powers engage to do my master's will. Help me to watch and pray and still on thee rely. Oh, let me not my trust betray, but press to realms on high." These words penned by Charles Wesley have been a source of challenge and comfort as I endeavor to fulfill the mission which I believe God called me to. When I accepted the call to serve as pastor of the Elton Wesley Holiness Church in the early 1990s, I had the privilege to be the pastor when land was purchased, and this sanctuary in which you now worship and celebrate your 100th anniversary was built. But I stood on the shoulders of those who years before me conceived the idea to build a new church to house the growing Elton congregation. I was also blessed to draw on the members and friends of the church who gave of their talents and skills for many years to ensure success of the building project. Those years remain the most memorable and cherished years. Today, I celebrate with you for having achieved this great milestone of 100th year of service to Elton and surrounding communities, and in recent times, the wider Barbados and the world. I pray that the church's ministry continues to be far-reaching and life-changing to all who come under her influence. May you continue to advance God's kingdom through the new technologies and talents God is bringing to your assembly, but always keep your ministry Bible-centered and Spirit-anointed. It is good and honorable that you are celebrating those who helped to lay the foundations on which you continue to build. St. Paul mentioned that he was given the honor of laying the foundation on which others were building. That had always been the model God used to propel his church down through history. The church universal It stands strong today and will be in the years to come, because we see ourselves as mere servants carrying the torch that was ignited long before we were born. Every blessing on your senior pastor and the rest of the pastoral staff. Blessings on all the members and friends of the Alton Wesleyan Holiness Church. May you as a congregation continue to have great success in ministry as you seek to advance the kingdom of Christ to the Alton community and the rest of the world. To God be all the glory and praise. And of quote, your brother and servant in Christ, Reverend Dr. Sherlin Kellman. As I continue, Reverend Dr. Sherlin Kellman was a very meticulous pastor who was always immaculately dressed. He is very tall in stature, over 6 feet. He was greatly loved by the congregation at Ellerton and was a source of inspiration for the youth of the church in particular. He was known to lead some very in-depth, robust, and thought-provoking interactive Bible studies. He loved to preach the word surrounded by his books. His well-researched presentations served to educate and grow the congregation. When he came to Bible study, he had a number of books right there. Anybody can come and check them if you wanted any more clarity. It was reported that with him as chair, the local board administration meetings sometimes finished after midnight. I had to endure those, as he took his time to plan and strategize for the work at Ellerton. This tall, articulate, and well-built pastor had the stance of a fast bowler and walked just as swiftly. You couldn't keep up with him at all. He leaped into the work of growing the building fund and moved swiftly to execute the building project. It was under his leadership that this building for the Alton Wesleyan Holiness Church was constructed here at UCC Lasty Road. As pastor, he took on the massive task of overseeing the construction of this beautiful edifice in which we presently worship. In 2000, members and friends of the church worked for 3 months, January to March, every night from 8 p.m. until 2 a.m., each night to bring the building to the roof level, because we had a team from Buffalo coming in to erect the roof. They couldn't believe that we were able to get that done within 3 months' time. Because when they came here, they came in December. And so they hoped by when they come back that we would be ready. We were more than ready. When they got here, they were really, really surprised, because the people had a mind to work. Reverend Kellman laid down his books and he took up his tools as a laborer in this project. He led from the front. I remember also leading from the front in whatever community task the church undertook during his tenure. The men used to be, whatever activity we embarked on, we worked a number of activities throughout our community. And Reverend Kellman, he was there dressed in his rubber boots, long sleeve shirt, gloves, and always first on the job. In 1 Corinthians 3, verse 6, Paul says, I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. Thank you, Reverend Kellman, for committing yourselves to the work of the Lord and for facilitating the growth of his church. In conclusion, today we honor the service of these ministers who have assisted with the spiritual growth and physical development of the Alton Wesleyan Holiness Church. Thank you for your service.